2, 3, 4. Okay, I forgot completely the rest of how that goes, but hopefully you can figure that out. But I can at least show you the real core fundamental parts. Bill Withers is an amazing, amazing, amazing musician. Whether it's We All Need Somebody to Lean On, and of course, Use Me. And Kissing My Love, which is just rooted in this kind of just funky R&B soul kind of guitar-driven sort of thing. And I love this style of music because it teaches you these super basic chops that can amplify anything you play later on in your guitar playing career. Okay, so it's kind of taking the fundamental stuff and making it more rhythmic based. This will not be an easy song to learn right off the bat. In fact, it is a relatively difficult song, but hopefully through this video you can at least get an idea of what is germinating here and what's being created here. What I'm using is a Sir modern guitar. It doesn't matter what guitar you use as long as you kind of use the neck pickup. The neck pickup is going to give you that warmer sound and not a lot of top end bite, which is kind of what you want for this style of music. You just want it more mellow. I have the tone knob almost all the way down, so it's literally just a little bit up. The tone knob is very cool for shaping your guitar sound, whether it's for this or anything you're going to be playing. A really good guitar with good electronics is going to be able to dial in the right amount of top end roll off that's happening. It's basically acting like a low pass filter because it takes the high end off, I think. Yeah. In terms of the sound on bias effects, which is what I'm using, but you can use your guitar amplifier. It doesn't really matter what you use. It's relatively clean sort of thing. I'm using a plexi sort of style amplifier, and I'm just taking screenshots, and I'm using a boost in front of it set as such, so that way you can see exactly what I'm using. I'm also using a reverb in bus 1, which is a Valhalla vintage verb. So that's what I'm using in terms of gear. The idea here is we take a very, very familiar, simple structure of composing a song. Now, it's got these different rhythmic kind of hits, which I'm not really going to go over. You can kind of listen and extrapolate and interpret as such on your own. But what I'm talking about is the chords. The chords are super basic. We have just here an E flat 7 kind of chord. You know, that kind of sound. And then we have the 5 chord, which sounds like this, which is the A sharp 7. And then that goes into the G sharp 7. So there's a point where I'm playing this, and that fits right over this G sharp 7 chord. Okay, so we'll get there when we get there, but that's it. It's really just those 3 chords being cycled in a very traditional kind of R&B, you know, blues sort of manner. What I'm going to go over is sequence 1. This is basically right when you start off the song, and I'm using the live version as a reference, okay? So if you put in Bill Withers' Kissing My Love live, this is right around what you're going to be hearing. So we have here our E7 or E flat 7 kind of chord, but it's really an E flat major chord that we're using. So we're using the 5th fret of the D string and 3rd fret of the G, 4th fret of the B. And that gives us 3 notes, which is a major triad, which is our 5th, our 3rd, and our root. Sequence 1 is the easier version of this, okay? Sequence 2 is going to be using that chord and kind of giving you that. So the first sequence I'm going to split into 4 parts. And part 1 goes like this. Let me play through it. Okay, one more time. Right, so we have this little loop thing kind of happening in the beginning. It goes like this. And what that is I'm sliding 4 to 5 on the D with my middle finger, and then I use 4th fret of the B, 6th fret of the G. So it's just a little 4-note kind of sequence. So I pick once, I do that kind of thing. So one more time. So the next little section for that is, and what you do there is you slide 5 to 6 on the D, then you play a little 2-note chord, 5th fret of the G, 6th fret of the B. You strike those 2 strings at the same time, and then you slide again 4 to 5 on the D. So that little part goes like this, very slow. One more time. And you can hear I'm adding in these little picking hits, these little kind of rhythmic little things that just kind of give you a little bit of a rhythmic kind of, you could say like a background or a foundation, so that way you can kind of keep an idea of what's happening rhythmically. Dun 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 dun, right? Dun 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 dun. Let's do part 1 of sequence 1, and it goes like this. Okay? And part 2 is very similar. We do that little loop thing, and then we slide 3 to 5 on the D, and then you play 4th fret of the B. And I play it like this, so it sounds like this. So now parts 1 and 2 together from the very beginning. Okay? Part 3 is exactly the same as part 1, so it sounds like this. And now part 4 is a little bit different. Let me play through it very slow. Okay? And this is probably the hardest part of doing this song, is kind of being able to add in that little fill that's going on here. So what we're doing is the loop one more time. So slide 4 to 5 on the D, 4th fret B, 6th fret G, right? And then we do a slide 3 to 5 on the D, and then we play this sort of sequence: 4th fret of the B, 6, 5, 3 on the G, 5th fret of the D, and then 3rd fret of the G, 5th fret of the G. And you can see here I'm using pretty much all of my fingers, and I'm using the middle finger, pinky, everything, okay? And it's to just kind of shape out the chord that I showed you earlier, which is 5th fret of the D, 3rd fret of the G, 4th fret of the B. So ideally, once we do that little fill, we have to be ready for that chord shape. Okay, so you kind of have to figure out for yourself. So what I do is I do middle finger on the B string, pinky on the 6th fret of the G, 5th fret of the G, and then my first finger is always on the 3rd fret of the G. My ring finger is always on the 5th fret of the D, and then I use my first finger pinky for the G string again. So all together, if I play this slow, and you can look at my fingers here, right? That's kind of the idea without letting the notes ring, what we're going after once we do that little fill. So let me play part 4 one more time in its entirety. So it should sound like this. Okay? And that's very important because sequence number 2 starts like this. Okay? And before we get into the harder part of the song, let's go over the whole entire first sequence. I'm going to play it slowly, parts 1 through 4. That way you kind of have it solidified here. So one more time. 1, 2, 3, 4. And then it goes into sequence 2 immediately after. Does basically the same exact things we did from sequence 1, except instead of doing the little loop, what you do is you play this chord. So you play 5th fret of the D, 3rd fret of the G, 4th fret of the B, and you hammer on the 5th fret of the G string with your pinky. So it sounds like this. No pinky. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, like that. Okay, and then we continue just as we did with the other parts. Right? And if you listen, the only real thing that's changing now is that we're adding in this chord in the beginning instead of the little loop kind of thing, we're not doing that, now we're doing the chord. Okay, so very slow, here's part 1, and just listen and see if you could figure this out before I even tell you what I'm doing here. So it's doing this. Okay, that should be very much like parts 1 and 3 of sequence 1. But again, I'm just doing this chord. Slide 5 to 6 on the D. Chord 5 on the G, 6 on the B. And then slide 4 to 5 on the D. So very similar to what we were doing earlier. Then again. And then we do basically part 4, the end of part 4. Slide 3 to 5 on the D string. And then we do our little fill. And then again. And then here what I do is the end of part 2. So slide 3 to 5 on the D, 4th fret of the B string, right? And then there's a part where it goes into so it does a. And what's happening here is that Hendrix chord, but just 2 notes of it. So we're playing the 6th fret of the G, 7th fret of the B. Okay? And if you listen to the song, again, it just kind of cycles through that over and over and over again. So I'm going to play through sequence 2 the best way that I can remember, and I'm going to play it slow, and hopefully you can just listen to the song and kind of catch any of these details that I might be leaving out. just going between 2 and 3 on the A string. So once we get to this G sharp chord, it's just 2, 3 on the A string, kind of going back and forth, and then 3, 4 on D string. Right, and you could just listen and you can hear those notes being kind of picked out by the guitarist, who's awesome. So it sounds like this. And then we go straight back into what we were doing earlier. And I think this is where we go into our A sharp 7 chord, down to that G sharp chromatically. So chromatically means I'm adding in this A7, going down. The same exact chord shape, just going down 1 fret at a time. And then we go up. Okay, so that's the idea there. And then he adds in this which is like the 9th fret of the B and the E, but I have to listen to the song to remember where the heck that is. Okay, so let me play through everything slowly, and I'll kind of slow down or pick out some parts that maybe I went over fairly quickly. So here we go, from the very beginning. So you see here, what I'm doing again is middle finger, first finger, and I'm also using my ring finger a lot. Okay, so these 3 fingers. And it's not until we get to that 4th part, again, where I'm just shaping out that chord already. Because if I don't, it's going to sound like this. There's going to be a little bit of a pause because I have to reset my fingers to play that chord. And it's happening super quick. So again, I would highly suggest you kind of shape out that chord and use your pinky. And what I'd like to do here also for that little part, which makes it a little bit easier, might be a little bit of a cheat, because I think the guitarist is just kind of picking everything naturally. But I like to palm mute. There's certain points where I might palm mute. You know. So it's imperative to really get this part down. Because if you don't, it kind of throws off the beat a little bit and it doesn't sound as cohesive as you can tell, where I get kind of caught up on that part. I would need to practice this more. You know, if I was to play this song, whether it's at a gig or for people or recording or whatever, I would have to get that part down. Okay? So it would be... It's close, but not quite. So do be very aware of parts that are giving you trouble. Just stop, slow down, and kind of go one note at a time and kind of figure out what's going on. So for example, for this little section, I'm having a problem. And what it is when it's returning back up with the pinky. So I can do this. And that's what I need to do. I kind of need to do 1, 2... Right, that kind of idea. And when I do it fast, it happens like this. You know, where my pinky kind of gets jumbled up. And so that, again, would, for me, my own personal problem would be to clean that up. And I would basically just be playing through it, cycling through it, kind of figuring out what is going on here with my pinky. Is it just hitting my other finger? Is it hitting the wrong string? What's going on? Take your time and kind of figure out the muscle memory required to kind of do this, okay? So, that's it. I'm basically done with this whole entire lesson. I'm sorry if it's so long. I'm sorry that I didn't go over every little thing, but I know there's a lot going on in the song. Hopefully it helps somebody out there out. and hopefully you'll be able to play Kissin' My Love by Bill Withers, hopefully sometime soon. Okay? Have a good one. Take care.